KTBB Friday Morning News Time 7:51. Garth Mayer and the whole crew. As we do every Friday morning at this time, we check in with KTBB owner, general manager Paul Gleiser, and you tell me, what's on your mind, sir?
Good morning, Garth. We're sponsored by K.E. Cellars, Tyler's Old World Style Boutique Winery in the French Quarter on South Broadway, across from the mall. A quick reminder, my wife Lee and I are headed to Rome and Sorrento, Italy on November 24th. We'd like you to come along with us. You'll avoid the summer crowds and the summer heat. You'll enjoy a perfectly balanced 8-day trip for just $1,992 per person, double occupancy. That's a great price. Get more details at ktbb.com/world tour. 2 years ago last week, then Senator Obama won the Minnesota Democratic primary and, in so doing, clinched his party's nomination for president. In the closing moments of his victory speech in St. Paul, he said the following.
I am absolutely certain that generations from now, we will be able to look back and tell our children that this was the moment when we began to provide care for the sick and good jobs to the jobless. This was the moment when the rise of the oceans began to slow and our planet began to heal. This was the moment when we ended a war and secured our nation and restored our image as the last best hope on earth. This was the moment. This was the time.
Those of us who never liked Obama surely never liked that statement. But more and more, even those who supported Obama don't like that statement, most notably the so-called independent voters that made the critical difference. Even allowing for the inevitable rhetorical inflation of a political campaign, it is toweringly arrogant, that statement, and stands now rebuked by events. As syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer put it, when you anoint yourself a latter-day King Canute, you mustn't act surprised when the peasantry discovers that you don't command the tides and doesn't like that discovery. Certainly the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico shatters the image of a healing planet. This disaster is making the president appear feckless and impotent. In fairness, there is little the president could have done to prevent the spill other than support drilling on dry land where it's manifestly safer, and there's little he can do now to cap the well. The president's discretion on this matter is limited to choosing which locker room language to use in his public statements on the subject. With respect to care for the sick, according to polling data from Rasmussen, nearly two-thirds of Americans want Obamacare repealed. Most Americans believe that Obamacare will end up costing more and delivering less than the present system, and most Americans are convinced that we can't afford it. In St. Paul, candidate Obama talked about jobs for the jobless. Since that speech, nearly 7 million jobs have been lost, and unemployment hovers stubbornly near 10%, despite spending nearly $1 trillion on stimulus. In St. Paul, he talked about ending a war, that being the war in Iraq. Iraq is now the least of his problems. Iran is moving inexorably toward nuclearization. War could break out at any minute in Korea and Israel. And Afghanistan slogs on now as the longest war in U.S. history. As far as America's standing in the world goes, the world's thugs have bitten President Obama's outstretched hand at every turn. So what are we to learn? We learn that the arrogance of big government is without limit. Despite overwhelming real-world experience, liberals doggedly persist in the pursuit of an all-knowing, benevolent government that provides for its citizens and shields them from every trouble. No such institution has or ever will exist. It was King Canute himself that said so. Tired of the sycophants and yes-men who surrounded him, he ordered his throne taken to the shore. When he could not stop the tide from washing in on where he sat, he said, "Let all men know how empty and worthless is the power of kings, for there is none worthy of the name, but he whom heaven, earth, and sea obey by eternal laws." You have to wonder if President Obama in his private moments can now identify. That's my word. What's yours? Go to ktbb.com/youtellme, and you tell me. It got hot early this summer. That has affected my wine choice. It ought to affect yours as well. As many of you know, I'm a red wine guy most of the time, but at these temperatures, I often depart from my favorite reds and go for wines that are served chilled. There are a couple of very nice ones for you to try today at K.E. Cellars. Ask them to try the 2007 Keeper Solid State Simeon. This is a cool, crisp, dry white wine that takes the edge off the heat and refreshes on a hot day. If you like something a little fruitier, ask to try the K.E. Bushman's Witzen Rosé. This wine looks a lot like a white Zinfandel, but it's more complex, and it happens to work very well with steaks, burgers, or chicken cooked out on the grill. This is a wine I would serve instead of beer to avoid the heavy, bloated feeling you often get with beer on a hot day. You can try these wines because K.E. Cellars is a working winery with a tasting room. Try any wine in the KE Cellars collection before you buy it. You'll never get home and be disappointed. KE Cellars, Tyler's Old World Style boutique winery in the French Quarter on South Broadway, across from the mall, and online at KECellars.com.